Thomas Hartwell had served as a royal guard at Windsor Castle for 12 years, but he had never been assigned to the private quarters of the late Queen before. The morning of October 15th started like any other autumn day, with crisp air filtering through the ancient stone corridors and the familiar sound of his polished boots echoing against marble floors. What he didn't know was that this ordinary Tuesday would change everything he thought he understood about royal history. The assignment came directly from the palace administrator, Mrs. Catherine Mills, a stern woman in her 60s who had managed the castle's operations for nearly 3 decades. She handed Thomas a brass key with an unusual inscription and explained that he needed to conduct a security inspection of the Queen's former private chambers. The rooms had been sealed since Her Majesty's passing 6 months earlier, and protocol required a thorough examination before they could be prepared for historical preservation. Thomas accepted the task without question. He was known among his colleagues for his discretion and attention to detail, qualities that had earned him access to some of the most sensitive areas of the castle. As he walked through the familiar hallways toward the Queen's quarters, he reflected on the weight of responsibility that came with his position. Every royal guard understood that they were not merely security personnel, but guardians of centuries of tradition and history. The Queen's private chambers were located in the Brunswick Tower, a section of the castle that few people ever entered. The hallway leading to her rooms was lined with portraits of previous monarchs, their painted eyes seeming to watch as Thomas approached the heavy oak door. The brass key felt cold in his hand as he inserted it into the lock, hearing the satisfying click that indicated the mechanism had engaged properly. The door opened to reveal a sitting room that seemed frozen in time. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sunlight streaming through tall windows, and the air carried the faint scent of lavender and old books. Everything remained exactly as the Queen had left it, from the reading glasses folded neatly on a mahogany side table to the half-finished crossword puzzle lying open beside her favorite chair. Thomas moved through the rooms methodically, checking windows, examining the walls for any signs of damage or security concerns, and noting the condition of various artifacts and furniture pieces. The Queen's personal library contained thousands of volumes, many with handwritten notes in the margins. Her writing desk held correspondence from world leaders, family photographs, and personal mementos collected over decades of service. It was in the bedroom that Thomas first noticed something unusual. Along the far wall stood an ornate wardrobe that seemed different from the other furniture in the room. While everything else appeared well-maintained and frequently used, this particular piece had a layer of dust that suggested it hadn't been opened in years. The wardrobe was made of dark walnut with intricate carvings depicting roses, thistles, and shamrocks, representing the union of England, Scotland, and Ireland. As Thomas approached the wardrobe for his inspection, he noticed that it was secured with an old-fashioned lock that appeared to be original to the piece. Most of the furniture in the royal quarters used modern security systems, but this wardrobe seemed to rely on traditional craftsmanship for its protection. The keyhole was elaborate, suggesting that whatever was inside held particular significance. Thomas tried the handles first, assuming the wardrobe would be unlocked like most of the other storage areas he had inspected. To his surprise, the doors remained firmly closed. He examined the lock more closely and noticed that it required a specific type of key, one that was different from any in his collection. The situation presented him with a dilemma. His instructions were to conduct a thorough security inspection, but he lacked the means to access this particular piece of furniture. After consulting his notes and the protocols provided by Mrs. Mills, Thomas decided to contact the palace administrator for guidance. Using his secure radio, he explained the situation and requested instructions on how to proceed. Mills informed him that there should be a master key for the wardrobe somewhere in the Queen's personal effects, likely in her jewelry box or private safe. The jewelry box was an elaborate creation of silver and mother-of-pearl, containing numerous compartments and hidden sections. Thomas searched through each area carefully, finding various keys for different purposes around the castle. Finally, in a small velvet-lined compartment at the bottom of the box, he discovered a key that matched the style and age of the wardrobe's lock. The key was unlike any Thomas had seen before. It was made of silver, with gold inlay work forming intricate patterns along its length. The head of the key bore the royal coat of arms, and the shaft was engraved with what appeared to be a date, 1953. Thomas recognized the significance of this year immediately. It was when the current queen had been crowned, marking the beginning of her remarkable 70-year reign. As Thomas held the key, he felt the weight of history in his hands. This wasn't just a piece of metal. It was a link to one of the most important moments in British royal history. The coronation of 1953 had been the first to be televised, bringing the ancient ceremony into homes around the world and beginning a new era of public engagement with the monarchy. With careful respect, Thomas inserted the key into the wardrobe's lock. The mechanism was well crafted despite its age, and the key turned smoothly with a satisfying click. As the lock disengaged, Thomas felt a mixture of anticipation and responsibility. Whatever was inside this wardrobe had been important enough for the Queen to keep locked away throughout her entire reign. The wardrobe doors opened with a slight creak, revealing an interior that was completely different from what Thomas had expected. Instead of everyday clothing or personal items, he found himself looking at what appeared to be a shrine to the Queen's coronation. The space was lined with purple silk, and the air that escaped carried the faint scent of cedar and something else, something that reminded him of ancient churches and important ceremonies. Hanging in the center of the wardrobe, carefully preserved and protected by a white cloth cover, was what could only be described as the most magnificent garment Thomas had ever seen. Even covered, its importance was obvious from the way it had been positioned and cared for. The supporting frame was made of the finest materials, and every detail of its storage suggested that this item held extraordinary significance. Thomas's training had prepared him for many situations, but discovering what appeared to be a priceless historical artifact was not among them. He immediately radioed Mrs. Mills again, this time with considerably more urgency in his voice. When he described what he had found, there was a long pause before she responded, telling him not to touch anything, and that she would be there immediately with additional personnel. While waiting for backup to arrive, Thomas stood guard over his discovery, trying to process the implications of what he had found. If his suspicions were correct, he was looking at one of the most important pieces of royal regalia in existence. The coronation robe would be worth millions of pounds, but its historical and cultural value was beyond calculation. The Queen's coronation had been a moment of hope and renewal for a nation still recovering from the devastation of World War II. The ceremony had represented continuity and tradition while also marking the beginning of a new Elizabethan age. If this was indeed her coronation robe, then Thomas had stumbled upon a tangible connection to that pivotal moment in history. As he waited, Thomas thought about all the official coronation artifacts he knew were housed in the Tower of London and other secure locations. The crown jewels were heavily guarded and displayed for the public, but somehow this magnificent robe had remained hidden away in the Queen's private chambers. The discovery raised questions about why it had been kept secret and what other treasures might be hidden throughout the royal residences. When Mrs. Mills arrived with a team of conservators and security experts, the atmosphere in the room changed dramatically. Everyone present understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The careful way they approached the wardrobe and the hushed tones of their conversations reflected the gravity of the situation. Thomas's role as the discoverer of this remarkable artifact had suddenly elevated his position from routine guard duty to participant in a significant historical moment. As he watched the experts begin their preliminary examination of the wardrobe's contents, he realized that this discovery would likely change not only his own life, but also contribute to the understanding of royal history and tradition. The day that had begun as a routine security inspection had transformed into something far more significant. Thomas had always known that working in Windsor Castle meant being surrounded by history, but he had never imagined that he would play a direct role in uncovering one of its most closely guarded secrets. As the afternoon light began to fade through the bedroom windows, he understood that this was only the beginning of what promised to be an extraordinary story. Dr. Elizabeth Pemberton arrived at Windsor Castle within 2 hours of receiving the emergency call from Mrs. Westenberg. Mills. As the Royal Collection's chief textile conservator, she had spent 30 years working with some of the most precious fabrics in British history, but the urgency in the palace administrator's voice suggested something truly exceptional had been discovered. She brought with her a team of specialists, including Dr. James Crawford, a historian specializing in royal ceremonial dress, and Maria Santos, a conservation photographer whose work documented royal artifacts for future generations. The team assembled in the Queen's bedroom where Thomas still stood guard over the opened wardrobe. Dr. II. Pemberton's first action was to assess the environmental conditions around the discovery. The room's temperature, humidity, and light levels were all carefully measured and recorded. She was pleasantly surprised to find that the Queen's private chambers had maintained ideal preservation conditions, likely contributing to the excellent state of whatever lay hidden beneath the protective cloth. With infinite care, Dr. Pemberton and her team began the process of revealing what Thomas had found. Using specialized tools and following strict conservation protocols, they slowly lifted the white protective covering. As the fabric fell away, gasps of amazement filled the room. Before them hung the most magnificent coronation robe any of them had ever seen. Its deep purple velvet, still rich and lustrous despite being over 70 years old. The robe was absolutely stunning in its craftsmanship and detail. The purple velvet formed the foundation, but it was the golden embroidery that truly took everyone's breath away. Intricate patterns of roses, lions, and crowns were worked across the entire surface of the garment using real gold thread that caught and reflected the afternoon light streaming through the bedroom windows. The embroidery was so detailed and precise that it appeared three-dimensional, with each element seeming to rise from the fabric's surface. Dr. Crawford immediately began documenting the robe's design elements, recognizing symbols and patterns that connected it directly to the 1953 coronation ceremony. The roses represented England, while thistles symbolized Scotland, and shamrocks represented Northern Ireland. Intertwined among these national emblems were golden crowns of various designs, each one representing different aspects of the monarch's role and authority. The level of symbolism embedded in the garment was extraordinary, telling the story of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth through needle and thread. Maria Santos began her photographic documentation process, using specialized lighting and equipment to capture every detail of the robe without causing any damage to the delicate materials. Her photographs would create a permanent record of the garment's condition and help experts around the world study its construction and historical significance. Each image revealed new details about the incredible craftsmanship that had gone into creating this masterpiece. As the team continued their examination, they made additional discoveries within the wardrobe. Carefully folded beneath the robe were matching accessories that had clearly been worn with the garment during the coronation ceremony. There was a velvet cap with ermine trim, delicate white gloves embroidered with pearls, and silk slippers decorated with the same golden patterns found on the robe. Each piece was a work of art in its own right, but together they formed a complete ensemble that represented the height of royal ceremonial dress. Dr. Pemberton's expertise allowed her to identify the various techniques used in the robe's construction. The gold embroidery was done using a method called gold work, where real gold thread is couched onto the fabric using silk thread. This technique had been used for centuries to create the most prestigious ceremonial garments, but the skill level demonstrated in this particular piece was extraordinary. The embroiderer who created this robe was clearly a master craftsman whose work represented the pinnacle of their art. The discovery of authentication documents within a sealed envelope tucked into a hidden compartment of the wardrobe provided definitive proof of the robe's provenance. The papers included certificates from the London embroidery house that created the garment, invoices for the materials used, and most remarkably, a personal letter from the young Princess Elizabeth to her dressmaker expressing her satisfaction with the completed robe. These documents not only confirmed the robe's authenticity, but also provided insight into the personal relationship between the future queen and the craftspeople who helped prepare her for coronation. Thomas watched the examination process with growing amazement. As each new detail was revealed, he began to understand the true magnitude of his discovery. This wasn't just a beautiful garment, it was a tangible connection to one of the most important days in modern British history. The robe had been worn by the Queen during her coronation ceremony, making it a witness to the moment when she accepted the sacred duty of ruling the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth. The team's investigation revealed fascinating details about how the robe had been created specifically for the coronation ceremony. According to the documentation, work on the garment had begun almost 2 years before the coronation, with dozens of skilled craftspeople contributing to its creation. The purple velvet had been specially woven in Lyon, France, using techniques that dated back to medieval times. The gold thread was certified as being 24 karat, and the pearls used in various decorative elements were natural pearls from the royal collection. Dr. Crawford's historical analysis provided context for understanding why this particular robe had remained hidden for so long. Unlike many royal ceremonial garments that became part of official displays or museum collections after their use, Coronation robes held special significance that made them almost sacred to their wearers. The decision to keep this robe private, rather than putting it on public display, reflected the deeply personal nature of the coronation experience for the young queen. As afternoon turned to evening, the examination revealed even more remarkable details. Hidden within the lining of the robe were small personal tokens that the queen had apparently sewn in herself. There was a tiny sprig of heather from Balmoral, a small piece of lace from her wedding dress, and a miniature saint's medal that had belonged to her grandmother, Queen Mary. These personal touches transformed the robe from a ceremonial garment into something much more intimate and meaningful. The conservation team also discovered evidence of modifications that had been made to the robe after the coronation ceremony. Small adjustments to the fit and the addition of reinforced areas suggested that the queen had considered wearing the robe for other important occasions but ultimately decided to preserve it in its original coronation state. This decision spoke to her understanding of the robe's historical importance and her desire to maintain its connection to that specific moment in time. Maria Santos's photographic work revealed details that were invisible to the naked eye. Under specialized lighting, she discovered that some of the embroidery incorporated subtle patterns that told the story of British history. Tiny, golden threads formed images of ships representing the Royal Navy, castles symbolizing the monarchy's ancient roots, and flowers representing the various nations of the Commonwealth. The level of detail was so extraordinary that new discoveries were being made with each photograph. The team's work also uncovered evidence of the incredible security measures that had surrounded the robe's creation. Special seals on some of the documentation indicated that the project had been classified at the highest levels, with only a select few individuals knowing the full scope of the work being done. This security was apparently maintained throughout the Queen's reign, contributing to the robe's successful preservation in secret for over 7 decades. As the day's examination concluded, Dr. Pemberton and her team had documented what was clearly one of the most significant royal artifacts ever discovered. The robe represented not just exceptional craftsmanship and historical importance, but also provided unique insights into the personal relationship between the Queen and her coronation experience. The decision to keep such a magnificent garment private, rather than displaying it publicly, revealed aspects of the Queen's character that the public had never seen. Thomas's role in the discovery had evolved throughout the day from simple finder to guardian of one of the monarchy's most precious secrets. As the conservation team prepared to carefully remove the robe for further study and preservation, he understood that his routine security inspection had uncovered something that would reshape understanding of royal history and tradition. The implications of the discovery were only beginning to be understood. Questions arose about what other treasures might be hidden in royal residences around the world and why this particular robe had been kept secret when so many other coronation artifacts were publicly displayed. The answers to these questions would require extensive research and investigation, beginning a new chapter in the story that Thomas had accidentally initiated with a simple turn of an antique key. The discovery of the coronation robe triggered an investigation that reached the highest levels of the royal household and beyond. Within days of Thomas Hartwell's remarkable find, a special committee was formed comprising representatives from Buckingham Palace, the Royal Collection Trust, leading historians, and security officials. The committee's mandate was to understand not only the robe's history and significance, but also to determine why such an important artifact had remained hidden for over 70 years. Lord Chamberlain Sir Andrew Thompson personally took charge of the investigation, recognizing that the discovery had implications far beyond its historical value. The existence of such a significant royal artifact outside official records raised questions about security protocols, inventory management, and the possibility that other important items might be similarly unaccounted for. Sir Andrew assembled a team that included the most senior members of the royal household, each bringing decades of experience in managing royal properties and collections. The investigation began with a comprehensive review of all documentation related to the 1953 coronation. Archives that hadn't been accessed in decades were opened, and researchers spent countless hours examining photographs, official records, and personal correspondence from the period. What they discovered was that the robe Thomas found was indeed one of several coronation garments created for the ceremony, but unlike the others, it had been specifically designated for the Queen's personal keeping, rather than becoming part of the official regalia. Dr. Casarula, Margaret Whitfield, the Royal Archives Senior Research Fellow, uncovered correspondence between the young Princess Elizabeth and her private secretary that shed light on the robe's secret status. In a letter dated 6 months before the coronation, the princess had specifically requested that one of the ceremonial robes be preserved for her personal collection, rather than being housed with other state regalia. Her reasoning was deeply personal. She wanted to maintain a private connection to the coronation experience that would be separate from her public duties as monarch. The investigation revealed that this arrangement had been approved by King George VI shortly before his death, making it one of his final decisions regarding his daughter's preparation for the throne. The dying king had understood his daughter's desire to preserve something sacred and personal from what would be the most important day of her life. This royal approval explained why the robe had remained hidden without being forgotten or lost. It had been intentionally kept private, according to the express wishes of both the king and the future queen. Security analyst Commander Sarah Williams led a parallel investigation into how such a valuable item had remained secure yet unrecorded for so long. Her team discovered that the queen had personally managed the robe's security throughout her reign, with only a select few trusted individuals knowing of its existence. The queen's private secretary, her personal dresser, and the head of household security had maintained a verbal tradition of guardianship that passed from one generation of royal staff to another without ever being formally documented. This informal security system had actually proven remarkably effective. The robe had never been at risk because its existence was known only to those who had dedicated their lives to protecting royal interests. However, when the Queen's longtime personal dresser retired in 2019 and her successor was not fully briefed before the Queen's passing, the knowledge of the robe's location had nearly been lost forever. Thomas's discovery had prevented what could have been an irreplaceable loss to royal history. The investigation also uncovered evidence of the Queen's personal relationship with the robe throughout her reign. Maintenance records hidden in her private papers showed that she had periodically inspected the garment, ensuring its preservation and occasionally making small adjustments to its storage conditions. These records revealed that the Queen had visited the robe at significant moments throughout her life, using it as a private space for reflection on her coronation vows and the weight of her responsibilities. Most remarkably, the investigation discovered that the Queen had left specific instructions regarding the robe's future in a sealed letter that was only to be opened after her death. The letter, which had been overlooked in the immediate aftermath of her passing, contained her wishes that the robe be preserved for future generations while maintaining its private character. She had specifically requested that it not become a public exhibit, but rather remain available for study by historians and conservators who could learn from its exceptional craftsmanship. The authentication process conducted by international experts confirmed beyond any doubt that this was indeed the robe worn by Queen Elizabeth II during her coronation ceremony. Advanced scientific analysis of the materials, comparison with photographic evidence from the ceremony, and examination of wear patterns all supported this conclusion. The robe was not just authentic, it was in remarkably good condition, testament to both the Queen's careful stewardship and the quality of its original construction. James Crawford's historical research revealed fascinating details about the robe's creation that hadn't been previously known. The embroidery house that created the garment had employed techniques that were already becoming obsolete in the 1950s, making the robe one of the last examples of traditional English goldwork at its highest level. The craftspeople who worked on the robe had been sworn to secrecy, and many took their knowledge of its creation to their graves, making the robe itself the primary record of their extraordinary skill. The investigation also explored the cultural and symbolic significance of the robe's hidden status. Royal historians noted that the Queen's decision to keep such a magnificent garment private represented a fascinating balance between her public and private selves. While she had spent 70 years sharing her life with the public, she had maintained this one deeply personal connection to the moment when she accepted the crown, preserving it as a sacred and private memory. International experts in royal regalia were consulted to place the discovery in global context. Dr. Henri Dubois from the Palace of Versailles and Professor Akiko Tanaka from the Imperial Household of Japan both confirmed that the practice of monarchs maintaining private ceremonial items was not unknown, but the scale and significance of this particular discovery was unprecedented. No other modern royal household had successfully preserved such an important coronation artifact in secret for such an extended period. The investigation's security review led to important recommendations for the future. While the informal guardianship system had proven effective, the near loss of knowledge about the robe's existence highlighted the need for better documentation and succession planning. A new protocol was developed to ensure that knowledge of private royal collections would be properly transferred between generations of staff while still maintaining appropriate security and privacy. Thomas Hartwell found himself at the center of the investigation, his account of the discovery being recorded in extraordinary detail for historical records. His methodical approach to his duties and his respect for proper protocol had ensured that the robe was discovered and handled correctly. The investigation committee formally commended Thomas for his professionalism and discretion, noting that his actions had prevented potential damage to an irreplaceable artifact. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the discovery would have lasting implications for understanding royal history and tradition. The robe provided physical evidence of the Queen's personal relationship with her coronation and offered new insights into how she had understood her role as monarch. The garment served as a bridge between the public ceremony that the world had witnessed and the private moment of acceptance that only she had experienced. The investigation also revealed the remarkable network of craftspeople, staff members, and officials who had collectively maintained one of the monarchy's most precious secrets for over 7 decades. Their discretion and dedication had preserved not just a magnificent garment, but a deeply personal piece of royal history that provided unique insights into the character and values of one of history's most significant monarchs. By the time the formal investigation concluded, it was clear that Thomas's accidental discovery had revealed far more than just a hidden robe. It had uncovered a story of personal faith, royal tradition, exceptional craftsmanship, and the complex relationship between public duty and private memory that defined Queen Elizabeth II's remarkable reign. The investigation's findings would influence how royal collections were managed in the future, and provided scholars with new avenues for understanding the institution of monarchy in the modern world. 6 months after Thomas Hartwell's extraordinary discovery, the impact of finding the Queen's hidden coronation robe continued to reverberate throughout the royal establishment and beyond. The investigation had concluded with recommendations that would reshape how royal collections were managed for future generations, while the robe itself had become the centerpiece of a new understanding of Queen Elizabeth II's private relationship with her public role. Following the Queen's written instructions, a special conservation facility was established within Windsor Castle specifically to house and study the robe. This facility represented a compromise between the Queen's desire for privacy and the academic community's need for access to such a significant historical artifact. Dr. Elizabeth Pemberton was appointed as the facility's director, leading a small team of specialists dedicated to preserving the robe while enabling careful scholarly research. The conservation work revealed even more remarkable details about the robe's construction and history. Advanced textile analysis showed that the purple velvet contained fibers that had been specially treated with techniques dating back to medieval times, making the fabric remarkably durable and resistant to fading. The gold embroidery was found to contain trace elements that matched gold from Commonwealth countries, suggesting that materials from across the British Empire had been incorporated into the robe's creation as symbols of unity and shared heritage.
Thomas Hartwell's life had been transformed by his discovery.
His exemplary handling of the situation led to a promotion within the Royal Guard, and he was specifically assigned to oversee security for the new conservation facility. This role allowed him to witness firsthand the ongoing research into the robe while maintaining the discretion and professionalism that had made his discovery possible. Thomas took particular pride in knowing that his careful attention to duty had preserved one of the monarchy's most precious secrets for future generations. The academic impact of the discovery extended far beyond royal historians. Textile experts from around the world requested access to study the robe's construction techniques, many of which had been lost to modern practitioners. The embroidery methods used in creating the golden patterns were so sophisticated that contemporary artisans found it difficult to replicate them, leading to new research into traditional craft techniques and their preservation. Dr. James Crawford published a comprehensive study of the robe that became the definitive academic work on coronation regalia. His research revealed that the robe represented not just exceptional craftsmanship, but also a sophisticated symbolic language that told the story of British identity and Commonwealth unity through its decorative elements. Each pattern and symbol had been carefully chosen to represent different aspects of the monarchy's role and responsibilities, creating a garment that was simultaneously a work of art and a historical document. The discovery also led to a broader review of royal collections throughout the various royal residences. While no other findings matched the significance of the Coronation Robe, the systematic search uncovered numerous previously unknown artifacts, documents, and personal items that enhanced understanding of royal history. This comprehensive inventory became the most thorough documentation of royal collections ever undertaken, establishing new standards for cultural preservation and historical research. International recognition of the discovery's importance came from unexpected quarters. The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization cited the robe's preservation as an example of how traditional crafts and cultural heritage could be maintained across generations. The techniques used in the robe's creation were added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage, ensuring that knowledge of these skills would be preserved for future craftspeople. The robe's influence extended into contemporary royal ceremony as well. When planning began for future coronations and state occasions, designers and historians used the hidden robe as inspiration for understanding how traditional elements could be incorporated into modern celebrations. The garment served as a bridge between ancient traditions and contemporary practice, demonstrating how royal ceremony could honor the past while remaining relevant to present times. Maria Santos's photographic documentation of the robe became an artistic achievement in its own right. Her images were displayed in a carefully controlled exhibition that allowed the public to experience the robe's magnificence without compromising its preservation. The photographs captured details that were invisible to the naked eye, revealing the incredible skill and dedication of the craftspeople who had created this masterpiece over 70 years earlier. The financial implications of the discovery were staggering, though monetary value was never the primary consideration. Insurance experts estimated that the robe was worth tens of millions of pounds, making it one of the most valuable single items in the royal collection. However, its cultural and historical significance was considered immeasurable, placing it in the same category as objects like the crown jewels that were beyond any realistic monetary valuation. The discovery sparked renewed interest in royal history among the general public. Books, documentaries, and academic papers about the robe and its significance reached audiences far beyond traditional royal watchers. The story of Thomas's accidental discovery captured public imagination, demonstrating how extraordinary historical moments could emerge from the most ordinary circumstances. Educational institutions incorporated the robe's story into curricula, ranging from history and art to engineering and conservation science. Students studying textile preservation, historical research methods, and museum management all found valuable lessons in how the robe had been preserved, discovered, and studied. The multidisciplinary nature of the project demonstrated how different fields of knowledge could collaborate to understand and preserve cultural heritage. The psychological impact of the discovery on those involved was profound. Thomas often reflected on how a simple security inspection had connected him to one of the most important moments in modern British history. His respect for his duties and attention to detail had revealed that even the most routine responsibilities could have extraordinary consequences when carried out with care and dedication. For the royal family, the discovery provided a new connection to Queen Elizabeth II's memory and legacy. The robe served as a tangible reminder of the young woman who had accepted the crown in 1953 and the faith she had maintained in that commitment throughout her 70-year reign. Family members who visited the conservation facility often spoke of feeling closer to the late queen through this intimate artifact that she had treasured throughout her life. The establishment of new protocols for managing royal collections ensured that future generations would benefit from improved documentation and preservation methods. The lessons learned from nearly losing knowledge of the robe's existence led to comprehensive databases, redundant storage systems, and formal succession planning that would prevent similar oversights in the future. Research into the robe continued to yield new discoveries about royal ceremony, traditional craftsmanship, and the personal dimension of public service. Each study revealed additional layers of meaning and significance, confirming that Thomas's discovery would continue to provide insights for scholars and historians for decades to come. The story of the Coronation Robe ultimately became a testament to the power of dedication, both from those who created and preserved it, and from those who discovered and studied it. Thomas Hartwell's careful attention to his duties had preserved an irreplaceable piece of history, while the Queen's decades of quiet stewardship had maintained a sacred connection to the moment when she accepted the responsibility of service that would define her life. As the first anniversary of the discovery approached, Thomas often returned to the conservation facility during his off-duty hours, still amazed by the magnitude of what he had found. The robe hung in its climate-controlled chamber, as magnificent as ever, continuing to inspire all who saw it with its beauty and the remarkable story of how it had remained hidden yet preserved for over 7 decades. The legacy of the discovery extended far beyond the robe itself. It demonstrated the importance of maintaining traditions and preserving history, while also showing how ordinary individuals performing their duties with integrity and care could make extraordinary contributions to human knowledge and cultural preservation. In finding the Queen's Coronation Robe, Thomas Hartwell had discovered not just a magnificent artifact, but a story that would inspire future generations to understand and value the connection between past and present, tradition and innovation, duty and discovery.